Last night was the Oscars, the annual award show where the Hollywood elites get together to pat themselves on the back. Now, I don't normally care about the Oscars, I just wanted to watch along with the Film Threat watch party. And the Best Director winner was Sean Baker for Anora, a film I didn't see from a director I do not know. Now, under normal circumstances, we're pretty much conditioned to believe most of the people giving acceptance speeches thank their mom and dad, the cast and crew, sometimes they drop a polarizing political point of view, and then they leave. And after winning 2 Oscars and thanking the sex working community in one of his speeches, Sean Baker went into a scripted speech on his 3rd Oscar win, advocating for movie theaters. That there needs to be movies in theaters and that people should take their families to them. That there is a communal event, a community experience to sit in a room with strangers for a film. I have to agree with that. I love movie theaters. I always have. This speech itself was inspiring. We should go to movie theaters. It's a shame there's just nothing worth going to see. Welcome to The Pondering. I am the real-life fake wizard. If this video brings you any value at all, I invite you to subscribe to this channel where we're posting new videos nearly every day. At the time of recording this, the box office has just experienced one of the lowest grossing weekends in 2025. Now, it is still very early in the year. It's only the first week of March, but there have been major releases this year so far. Right now in theaters, there's a Marvel movie that's not going to break even. A mid-tier Stephen King adaptation, we got an action Valentine's Day movie, and a slasher Valentine's Day movie. All 4 of these entries are being skipped by general audiences. So what else is coming out this year? Snow White, the Minecraft movie, Thunderbolts, Superman, Jurassic Park, and of course, these are all the tentpole films. And yes, there are lots of other art house and indie films coming out too. But I really want to hone in on what Sean Baker said during his 3rd acceptance speech.
Right now, the theater-going experience is under threat. Movie theaters, especially independently owned theaters, are struggling, and it's up to us to support them. During the pandemic, we lost nearly 1,000 screens in the US, and we continue to lose them regularly. If we don't reverse this trend, we'll be losing a vital part of our culture. This is my battle cry. Filmmakers, keep making films for the big screen. I know I will. Distributors, please focus first and foremost on the theatrical releases of your film. Parents, introduce your children to feature films in movie theaters, and you'll be molding the next generation of movie lovers and filmmakers. And for all of us, when we can, please watch movies in the theater, and let's keep the great tradition of the movie-going experience alive.
Now that's bold. And great. As someone who loves films, I totally agree. I do not want movie theaters to go the way of the dinosaur. The problem I have with these sentiments is nothing that Sean himself said. It's that his call stems down to put movies in theaters and go see movies in theaters. I mean, that's fine, but that's not why movie theaters are closing regularly. Movies are in theaters. Movies are being made for theaters because that's where they make the most money. Netflix does what Netflix does, but the rest of the studios want to make their money in Regals and AMCs. Movies themselves, being in theaters, is not why theaters are suffering. Theaters are suffering because of 3 reasons, and 2 of them contribute to the 3rd. Firstly, the movies in theaters are not worth going to the theater for. Last year, I saw 60 films. I only saw these films because I covered them here on this channel and on Criticless. Only 8 of them I considered to be S tier and A tier, with the vast majority placing in D and F tier. That's embarrassing. And there was a strong crossover between big budget tentpoles and small scale flicks in my lower ranks. Movies just aren't good anymore, and there are countless reasons for that. Studios aren't making movies with creativity or art in mind. The budgets on these movies are astronomical, but the final product is predictable and soulless. Studios will opt to make sequels and remakes for things because they know there's a built-in audience. They don't have to evangelize newcomers like they do with brand new properties. The age of the movie star is gone. People might go to see a Tom Cruise movie because they like Tom Cruise, but even that wasn't enough to make Mission Impossible 7 profitable. Compound this with the fact the writers have no idea how to tell a good story anymore, and the marketing teams think it's a good idea to spoil half the movie in the trailers. By the time you're seated in a theater, you're watching along just picking up the extra breadcrumbs they didn't spoil in the trailer. Because all too often, if you've seen a movie trailer, you've seen the whole movie. Entertainment today is being pioneered by people who often share 3 character traits: ideology that they want to impose upon the viewer, animosity for the audience, like they genuinely hate the people they're making movies for, and shockingly enough, the third is creative incompetence. Some people just have no idea how to tell good stories, or they're incompetent to do the jobs they're hired to do. Some examples: if we were to look objectively at all the Marvel movies in Phase 4 and 5, the acting is not horrible, the action can be good at times, the special effects are weak, but under the circumstances, we can kind of forgive that. So why are these movies underperforming? Why don't people care anymore? Because the writing is awful. Why is the writing awful? Ant-Man Quantumania had a single writer who had never written a movie before in his life. The Marvels had 3 writers. 2 of them had never written a movie before. Captain America Brave New World had 5 writers. 3 of them were TV writers who never wrote a movie in their lives. Thunderbolts has 3 writers, 2 of which have never written a movie before in their lives. And Fantastic Four has 5 writers, 3 of which have never written a movie before in their lives. And I'm gonna give massive props to my good friend, the Storytime guy, for finding all that research. It's a culmination of garbage in, garbage out. Marvel and studios like it are casting the wrong people to write, direct, and create movies. Yes, casting. Therefore, the final products that are played in cinemas are boring, empty, and oftentimes offensive. I'm aware we're talking about Marvel a bit here, and I want to get back to Sean Baker's claims about movies, because there's a lot more movies than just Marvel slop being made. Now, I said there aren't any movies worth going to theaters for. Okay, so Anora, which swept up at the Oscars, is about, quote, a young escort from Brooklyn who meets and impulsively marries the son of a Russian oligarch. Once the news reaches Russia, her fairy tale is threatened as his parents set out for New York to get the marriage annulled. That's the description on IMDb. And I spoke about this movie on stream because I saw the trailer for it in theaters, and I was disgusted. Like, I said it on stream, I have no desire to see this film. None. It's not for me. And that's fine, that's okay. Clearly some people like it. But things like this are so polarizing with their moral values that it's not going to attract wide audiences. Now, does that mean movies like this should not get made? Well, no. Indie films like this should absolutely get made. But don't expect wide audiences to come to the theaters to see them. Most general audiences are just looking for escapism. Positive, heroic escapism. They don't want to be lectured about the writer/director's political ideology. They don't want to be told that they're wrong for believing the things they do. And they definitely don't want to be bored. Now, point 1 here could go on forever, but to summarize it, there's nothing to see in theaters because the quality of films available is objectively bad. Point number 2 calls back to the people making the films. Let's assume all those writers and all the creatives in Hollywood are genuinely doing their best. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay, well, if this is their best, then they're making movies for themselves and themselves alone and do not care about the audience. Which then also means that the people making movies are fundamentally different people than the general audiences, and not in a good way. There is a divide between modern-day creatives and the customers. Creatives today are making things from a place of pride. They inherit legacy properties that were at one time profitable and try to inject their own beliefs into them, or maybe worse, they try to change them, to plant a flag so that people know this is my franchise now. We saw this kind of famously with Rian Johnson and Leslie Headland, both for Star Wars. And upcoming, we're seeing this kind of with Charmin Obaid-Chinoy for the Rey film. They want to make Star Wars theirs. It's not about the legacy. It's not about the paying audience. It's about them and selfishly leaving their marks on something. And we can move away from Star Wars. Last year, there were countless films that were written and produced with the intention of telling stories about selfishness and hedonism. There are no lessons learned. The protagonist doesn't overcome real obstacles, and they don't experience real failures. Audiences do not like these movies because it's very hard to connect with selfish people. We don't like them. And so when you have film after film after film about protagonists that had the power inside them all along, and then they use that power to fulfill their own impulsive desires, are you surprised that people don't want to pay to see this? Yes, the creatives are surprised because they believe in this stuff. They believe that the terrible and awful things that the protagonists do to get ahead is good. Taking advantage of others is a good thing. And as I said, the people making these films are fundamentally different people than the regular movie-going public. I believe that movies today can really be split into three categories. Corporate slop pieced together by a marketing department and corporate managers. Here we find things like Captain America: Brave New World and Moana 2. Then you have the roller coaster spectacles. These are films made with the intent of coming and going. Roller coaster rides that are quick fast food movies like Ghostbusters 4, Godzilla x Kong, Alien Romulus. To some degree, I'd say the Sonic franchise, and that doesn't make any of these bad. It's just that they're roller coaster rides, here and gone. The third is aggressively polarizing art, and there's a spectrum here. You could have Nosferatu on here, but also Anora, but also Heretic, but also Blink Twice. And I hated Blink Twice. And all of that takes me into the third and final point, at least for this video. There's nothing to see because most of the movies are bad. And the reason for that is because the creatives aren't making movies with audiences in mind. And the conclusion there is that you've lost the audience and they're not coming back. Going to the movies is a massive undertaking for most families. You're looking at a $100 outing to take a family to see the next Disney film, and sometimes that's just on tickets. Now, if the movie is bad or doesn't align with your values, why risk going? You're better off waiting for it to go to streaming in a couple of weeks, where you can make sure it's good, and then if it is, it's a good distraction for 90 minutes of quiet time in the house. And if it's bad, well, you didn't lose any extra money. Hollywood has conditioned families and the movie-going public to not care about going to the cinemas anymore. The products are too weak to warrant traveling 30 minutes and paying for an experience that is not guaranteed to be satisfying. On top of that, let's not forget that most movie theaters in the United States are disgusting and run down. So now you're paying $18 a ticket for an experience where the theaters are trashed by disgusting people or interrupted by screaming kids whose parents won't tell them to shut up. Why would I want to pay lots of money for this? Let's look at something that should have done much better than it did. Wicked. Wicked from 2024 was massive here in the United States. It was all over social media. The marketing tour was absolutely cringe, and we were told that the movie made lots of money. Well, it's been out of theaters for some time, and we can see here, this cleared $700 million. That should be a hit, and by all means, it is. Except, Universal wanted much more. With an IP that was this big and a marketing push as big as it was, and the fact they shot 2 movies back to back, Wicked was supposed to be a double billion-dollar spectacle. Both the films were intended to break $1 billion at the box office. Now, that's not really a statement on the quality of the film per se. It's more so that with all the marketing and all the promotion and the interviews and hype and sing-along versions, it still wasn't enough to break $1 billion. People just stopped caring. Personally, I think the marketing contributed to this. I also think the movie's runtime was too long, but neither of those indicate the movie was bad or that it didn't deserve $1 billion. People just stopped caring. People didn't go a second and third time. They saw it once and didn't see it again. And yes, Wicked still made $700 million, and for a few weeks, it was all anyone talked about. But there are lots and lots of movies that don't get anywhere close to that level of discussion. Most movies are here and gone in a single weekend. For content creators who cover movies, you need to get a review out as quickly as possible because by Monday, everyone has moved on. No one really cares anymore. And that's because they don't have a reason to care. Movies aren't special anymore. They used to be. They can be again. But it's going to come down to a new age of creators picking up cameras and telling stories rather than the corporatism disease that is plaguing us now. It's time for the next generation of filmmakers to get to work. And that could be you, or it could be someone you know. Maybe someone close to you needs a word of encouragement to pursue their creative interests. Give it to them. Tell them to try. There's no harm in trying. There's no harm in learning something new. People are starving for an encouraging word. The stewards of storytelling are diminished. There are not many who I would say I truly look forward to seeing work from anymore. And that means the age of the independent creators is here. There are more tools available now than ever before. You don't need to make the next Titanic. You don't need to make the next Terminator 2. You just need to try. And until next time, create, innovate, inspire, and for the love of God, cancel Disney Plus. Goodbye.